It's easy to say Yoshinobu Yamamoto is the best pitcher in the National League, but do the numbers bear it out? Let's talk about it live on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and thanks to those of you who are with us live here on Sunday night. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. So please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snider. That guy next to me is my co-host, Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like most of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And Vince, it was a very good pitching weekend for the Dodgers this weekend as they won 2 out of 3 from the Rangers. You basically, other than one inning, it was a very good pitching weekend for the Dodgers. We're going to focus mostly on the positives of that, specifically Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who strengthened his case for maybe the best pitcher in baseball, best pitcher in the National League. We're going to dig into that. Next segment, we're going to talk about Roki Sasaki and the fact that he looked like just a regular pitcher, which is a really good thing for him. And then we're going to dig into replay review because Sunday's game ended on a controversy that makes me feel like ranting a little bit. So Yamamoto on Friday, another dominant start, lowered his season ERA down to, 0.79, 0.93, sorry. 0.79 will come up later when we're talking about somebody else who caught you and me both by surprise. Yamamoto has just been dominant. It's basically, this isn't a this year thing. This is going back to basically since his one clunker start in Korea last year. He's got an ERA in the low 2s since then. This is a full year plus of Yoshinobu Yamamoto showing that he is just a really, really, really good pitcher.
Yeah, he's been, obviously there was the clunker in Korea, and then he had one more bad start against the Padres. But other than that, like he's had a lot of great starts, a lot of really good starts, and a couple phenomenal starts. The Yankee game, well, it sucks that he got hurt after that, but he ended up coming back and doing the job. And now this year is looking, it's one of those things where sometimes it's easy to say things because you believe it, but two, like realistically, it looks like that's the next step. And with Yamamoto, we're both very confident that he was ready to take that next step to being an ace for this Dodger team, and he's done that.
Yeah, and you and I watch more Dodgers than any other team. It's our job, it's our passion, it's it's what we do. And so, yeah, we watch other teams, but we see every one of Yamamoto's starts. And so I got to thinking, like, okay, it's easy for us to say, yes, he's dominant. Of course, he's the best pitcher in baseball right now. And it's hard to picture anybody being better, but, stats exist for a reason, and I'm a firm believer in facts over feelings. And so I thought we'd look at other people who might, and we'll just stick with the National League for now. Looking at the American League, there's a couple guys with arguments, but Dave Roberts said best pitcher in the National League. So we'll stick with that right now. And the name that Dave Roberts threw out there as a possible contender was, of course, Paul Skenes. Paul Skenes' stuff is ridiculous, and he's having another good year. Not as dominant as last year, but still, interesting.
Paul Skenes is weird because you'll see, like, you don't see Paul Skenes. And then it's like, he went 6 innings, 2 runs, or 7 innings, 2 runs. And it's just, he's just like, that's what he is now.
Yeah, he's got a 2.87 ERA. Interestingly, he has fewer strikeouts than innings pitched. He's got 30 strikeouts and 31 in a third innings pitched, which is, we'll see. Obviously, the Dodgers are probably going to see Skenes next weekend, and so we'll have more to say about him. He's a guy who he's going to be in this conversation because of talent. I'd say so far this year, if they voted for Cy Young right now, Paul Skenes wouldn't be in the top 2 for sure, and probably not in the top 5. But talent-wise, you can see why he's in the conversation. Hunter Greene is another guy who he's had all the talent in the world for years and is finally starting to put it together. He's got a 2.35 ERA, striking out 10.3 per 9. He leads the National League in WHIP and hits per 9. Just having a very very good season so far.
Yeah, he looks good. He passes the eye test and passes the number test. Skenes passes the eye test and, maybe not as much the number test, but I feel like Skenes is maybe in that transition of figuring out how to get deeper into games, because I feel like he's gone at least 6 innings in a lot of his starts so far. But we're talking about Yamamoto, and Yamamoto's done the same thing. Yamamoto's been very good. Yamamoto's been racking up strikeouts. He's, faced a variety of different offenses, and he makes it look easy. Like it's not, Hunter Greene and Paul Skenes, those guys throw hard. They have hard, their movement is hard. Their velocity is hard. Like everything looks hard and strong and fast. Yamamoto's, even though he does throw hard, but not as hard as those guys, but he's very finesse. He works it. That splitter gets going. He mixes in. He has, some pinpoint control. It's a lot of fun to watch him pitch. And it's a lot of fun to watch those other guys pitch for different reasons. But Yamamoto is just so aesthetically pleasing to watch.
Absolutely, especially the command that you mentioned, where he can throw that splitter that drops below the zone and get swing and miss. And then as soon as they're thinking, okay, I'm not going to swing at that splitter, he'll just throw a fastball that's right at the bottom of the zone and strike you out looking. Like it's the command is ridiculous. And that was his bread and butter in Japan. Like coming over, that was the one thing we knew. Like, yes, he's got a good fastball, he's got a great splitter, but the command is what really sets him apart. And there were times we saw that last year. It's taken it to the next level this year. And you mentioned the quality of opponents, the variety of opponents. I was looking at Hunter Greene's game log, and first of all, he did allow 5 runs in 3 innings to the Orioles the other day. His other 4 starts this year have been two against the Giants, 1 against the Rangers, 1 against the Pirates. And we saw this weekend the Rangers offense isn't clicking yet. I think there's still potential for it to be good. It's definitely not clicking yet. The Giants have been playing over their heads, but they're not an offensive juggernaut. And the Reds, Hunter Greene's on the Reds. The Pirates are the Pirates, and so the Orioles might be the best team he's faced, and they're the team that put up 5 runs in 3 innings. Kodai Senga is an interesting one that caught you and me both by surprise. He's the one who has the .79 ERA and is the only person ahead of Yamamoto. If you look at the leaderboard for the National League, and you've got Senga is the only one ahead of Yamamoto in ERA, the only one ahead of him in ERA plus. There's a few people, Logan Webb, Matthew Liberatore, Jesus Luzardo, and Paul Skenes are all ahead of Yamamoto in FIP. Although Luzardo and Skenes, it's basically the same. Luzardo is 1.99, Skenes 2.0, and Yamamoto 2.02. So they're basically exactly the same. Logan Webb is the head there. But all in all, like you look at WAR for pitchers, and Freddie Peralta is the only one ahead of Yamamoto. Like everything you look at, Yamamoto is like right there near the top of the list in the National League, with other guys, one guy ahead of him in one, a different guy ahead of him in another. I feel like if the season ended today, first of all, that would be a bummer. But if they were voting for Cy Young today, I feel like Yamamoto would have to be the answer.
Yeah, like I said, just from an overall perspective, he attacks it from a few different ways. He has the numbers in a few different ways. The Dodgers, I think being on a good team helps, even though, Cy Young in recent years has gone more to better complete pitcher, more so than, win-loss record and all that type of stuff. But, for Yamamoto to be leading one of the best team in baseball is, counts for a little bit of something. And for him to do it the way he's doing. And, it's great to see after all the early talk after Korea, and even, maybe after a couple starts, and why did the Dodgers pay him this much money, or why did, blah, 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 all this other stuff. And to see it coming to fruition, as quickly as it is, knowing how much longer he has and knowing that, he can still get better. It's just so fun to see. And for the Dodgers, it's great because, Blake Snell's been out. They've had a lot of good starting pitching performances. They've had some, mediocre ones, but he's been the guy that's stabilized it because he's giving you 6 innings at least every time in and out.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that makes me most excited about this is the fact that, I think back to Ross Stripling's All-Star year, Alex Wood's All-Star year, Tony Gonson's All-Star year. And it's like, okay, he's had a great first half of the season, but do we really expect him to keep that up? And the answer in all those cases was no. I feel like they've turned a corner, but not to this extent. Yamamoto, this just feels like who he is. It doesn't feel like he's pitching out of his mind. It doesn't feel like he's over his head or anything. It's just, he's just an excellent pitcher, pitching excellently.
Yeah, he's going to have a clunker at some point, but that doesn't take away from the overall what he is and how he's pitching and what he looks like. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yamamoto is one of 2 Japanese superstar pitchers currently in the Dodgers rotation. And Roki Sasaki has looked really bad and really questionable most of the season. His start on Saturday, he looked like a kind of guy you could forget about in a very good way. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances, because Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Think about it. How many accounts do you have that you have to log into? For me, I've got my bank account, I've got my mortgage account, I've got my car payments, I've got my investment accounts, all these different things. And I don't like to log into all of them. Monarch Money says, hey, log into one thing. I'll grab all that stuff for you. I'm like, thank you, Monarch Money. I appreciate that. So you can also do the same thing. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Hey, we're back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks for being an everydayer. If you are, if you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. Make that easy on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. And of course, you can go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text messages from us, one-on-one conversations with us, and access to our Discord server. We've been having a lot of fun there lately, so check that out. Just a few bucks a month with a free 14-day trial. And for your second listen, be sure to check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. So after Yoshinobu Yamamoto's masterpiece on Friday, Dodgers won the opening game of the series. Roki Sasaki went 6 innings for the first time in his career. 6 innings, 2 runs, just 1 2-run homer. And also Andy Paul has robbed a home run, saved him. That would have just been a solo homer. Even if that goes over the wall, it's still a quality start. 6 runs, 3 innings, or 6 innings, 3 runs. 6 runs, 3 innings is what we've come to expect from Sasaki. He flipped that in a good way. And you and I were talking during that game, Vince, about how he just seemed like a normal pitcher. It was just kind of, oh, here's another guy in the rotation. Whereas every other Roki start, it's been like, okay, what's going to happen now? And there were flashes of brilliance and flashes of, and this one, there was maybe not as many flashes of brilliance, but definitely really none of the flashes of,
Yeah, it was a start, like any other starter, which is not necessarily a bad thing because, with Roki so far, he gets the extra attention because of, everything that happens. And I'm sure there's fans of other teams that you like to hate watch or at least check in on Roki stats. And, this was one where you couldn't say much after the fact. And, even in game, the fact that it was on Saturday at 1 p.m. probably didn't help on a holiday weekend. So, maybe people weren't watching or whatever it was. It just felt like, oh yeah, Roki Sasaki went 6 innings, 2 runs. That was good. And then when you kind of look into it a little bit more, you're like, okay, there was some stuff that maybe not so good, but also the fact of the matter is that was his best start of the year so far. And, if he didn't have some of the stuff, didn't flash some of that brilliance, that leads you to believe that there's more to come.
Yeah, and one of the things that was noted on the broadcast a few times was that his velocity was down. His fastball, his four-seamer, ranged anywhere from 92.3 miles an hour up to 96.9, and mostly sat in the 93 to 95 range for most of the game. And John Smoltz mentioned a couple times how sometimes if you sit at that lower velocity, then you can actually change speeds upward. And we did see that, like that 96.9 came in the fifth inning, the bottom of the fifth inning. And he kind of, if you look at the fifth and sixth innings, his velocity basically went up as the game went on. And we used to see that from Justin Verlander back in the day when he was at his best. He would be throwing 97 earlier in the game and then 100 later in the game. So this same kind of concept and reaching back when you need it, where where you have people kind of expecting the 93 and then you throw the 96 and it can maybe catch them off guard a little bit. For me, though, the big thing was the slider usage, like both the quantity and the quality. He threw it coming into this. He was throwing it about 15% of the time, and he basically doubled that. He threw it about a third of the time in this game, and he got a couple swings and misses, got a couple foul balls, got some outs on it, got some called strikes. There were plenty of balls mixed in there too. But of the 23 sliders that he threw, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 balls. So he threw it for a strike of some sort in about half the time. And, that's been kind of the thing that everybody's been saying after every start. He needs that slider so that the fastball on the splitter will work better.
Yeah, he still gave up 3 walks, which, you always prefer to see 0 in that stat line, but ultimately didn't hurt him. But I think, kind of what you talked about in terms of pitching up, I think the velocity I'm not worried about if he's being effective. And the reason he was able to be effective was because, he was able to throw more strikes, whether that's because the velocity was down. He said it was a mechanics thing, which is why he was able to ramp it up as the game went on. Maybe that's the case. I honestly think that he's just wants to focus on throwing strikes, and, the mechanics can get you to where you need to get to. You can rear back and fire when you need to rear back and fire. And again, all this fact of the matter, even with the Rangers not necessarily being a hot offense at the time, they're still good players there. Marcus Semion's a good MLB player. Corey Seager, probably still one of the best hitters in baseball. You have Adolis Garcia, who ended up hurting the Dodgers later that game. Like, Wyatt Langford was a highly touted guy coming up. Like, there's still a lot of talent on that team. He was able to maneuver through, work through. And, yeah, I just feel like for him, confidence builds in games like this. The fact that he was able to go 6 innings, he was very efficient, like, maybe even pitching the contact a little bit, not trying to worry about the strikeout. Whatever it was, it all combined in a good way, and I hope that's what he's going to try to do moving forward.
Yeah, he threw 30 fastballs, and if I'm counting correctly, only 7 balls with the fastball. That is such a huge change for him because in addition to having the slider, he's got to get ahead of hitters so that he can throw the splitter. You can't – his splitter isn't yet in a place of command where he can throw it in a 2-1 count.
Yeah.
You need to be in that 0-1 count, the 0-2 count, 1-2, where you can afford to throw a ball, or you have the hitters on their heels, so you have a better chance of getting a chase. A good example was in Sunday's game, Freddie Freeman's at bat when he hit the sac fly to score the only run of the game. The 1-0 pitch from Chris Martin pitching to Freddie Freeman, and Martin threw a splitter that was a very good pitch. It was barely outside the zone, but even if it had been in the zone, Freddie wouldn't have swung at it because Freddie wasn't looking for a strike. He was looking for a pitch he could get in the air, because Freddie, because it was a 1-0 count, he was in a position where he could look. He knew, I need to hit a sac fly here. Worst case, I need to get this run in. If it goes over the wall, if it finds a gap, great, but I need to get the ball in the air to an outfielder. And so he knew this pitch down at my shins isn't a pitch I can get in the air. And because it was 1-0, he could afford to just lay off that. And he didn't care if it was a ball or a strike. It didn't matter to him. It wasn't a sac fly pitch. And that's kind of that same idea. When Roki's in a 1-0 count, hitters can look for a specific pitch. And so you throw the splitter, you can just like, okay, I'm not going to hit that well, so I'm going to take it, and either it'll be a ball or a strike. Either way, I'm still in a good position. But when it's 0-1 or 0-2, they're like, well, I can't just take this pitch out of hand. I got to at least try. And it just changes everything, that strike one thing. And so that for me was the best thing about Sasaki was the first pitch strike percentage was around 50% on the season coming in, and it was closer to 70% in this one. Like, just a huge, massive difference that can change a game for any pitcher.
Yeah, and for him to be efficient, and if this is the way it goes, that's what the Dodgers are going to take, especially right now with, still some of the uncertainty that kind of comes with Blake Snell being out, and then, probably having to throw some spot starts here and there as well, one bullpen game coming up this week. So the more innings I can get, the better.
Yeah. We'll talk about that briefly, I guess, before we go to break. The Dodgers did announce they'll be doing a bullpen game on Wednesday. We'll see if that changes after Tyler Glasnow had to leave after only 4 innings in this game, so the bullpen got used a little bit more heavily. But with a day off on Monday and a day off on Thursday, probably a bullpen game coming up on Wednesday against the Cubs. But this series, well, the Sunday game and the series ended on a controversial instant replay review. I've got some feelings about instant replay that, a nice rant is nice every once in a while. We'll get to that, so please keep it locked on Dodgers. We are back. Thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen or your last listen, whichever listen it is. We appreciate it as long as it's one of your listens. If it's one of your listens every day, you're what we call an everydayer, and that's our favorite kind of people. The rest of you, we like you a lot, but if you're an everydayer, we like you a little bit more. That includes you, family members. Also, what else? Be sure to go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. So this game, Vince, ended with a caught stealing. Wyatt Langford was on first base. There's 2 outs. Jake Berger at the plate it was a 1-1 count. I don't remember if the pitch was ball 1 or strike 1. Anyway, after the pitch, it was 1-1, and Wyatt Langford going on the pitch. Will Smith made a good, strong throw. Langford beat the throw, but because his slide carried him off the bag, he came off the bag. Miguel Rojas either held the tag on him or didn't, and the umpire called Langford out. It went to review, and after a long review, the umpire said the call stands. And Dave Roberts, after the game, said it looked to him like the laces of Rojas's glove were on Langford still. The rule book specifically says the laces don't count. I guess Dave Roberts doesn't know that. Rojas himself said the whole time he thought his glove was on him the whole time, and then he watched the replay and said, oh, it wasn't. So he expected them to get overturned, and then it wasn't. In the end, it probably doesn't matter. Chances are, even if he gets there, Jake Berger still needs to get a hit, and Tanner Scott is still a good pitcher. Jake Berger probably makes the 3rd out, even if they call Langford safe. It reminded me a little bit of the 2021 NLDS, which ended on Wilmer Flores being said he swung on the Max Scherzer pitch. He probably didn't go, but there's no way in the world that Wilmer Flores was going to win that game against Max Scherzer anyway. This one isn't as a foregone conclusion as that one was, because in this case, the tying run was in scoring position with the very fast runner. So, it's questionable. So in a way, I don't think it's a huge deal, but this was the second call in this series where the umpires probably got the call wrong on the field, and replay review said, well, we're only 90% sure he was wrong, so it's got to stand. The other one was Tommy Edman stealing second base, and the umpire trying too hard. Like, Edman beat the throw, but umpires thought he saw something, and so he called him out, and the replay review said, well, we can't say for sure that the umpire didn't see something, and so the call stands. And I was almost glad that this one happened on Sunday, because I didn't want to talk about it if it was just the one going against the Dodgers, because I don't want to seem like sour grapes. But my opinion for years in writing and on this podcast has been, if you're 90% sure you got the call wrong, fix it. I hate that we have to be clear and convincing, 100% sure. And there have been a few calls this year where I've thought that maybe they had softened up that requirement, and maybe it just depends on who's in New York doing it. But like, in this case, yeah, they should have called Wyatt Langford safe, because if Rojas's glove touched Langford while he was off the base, none of us could see it. And so none of us would have any right to be upset about them saying it wouldn't. But because they were only 96% sure that they got the call wrong, it call stands. Like, I don't understand why it defaults to the call of the fast motion. Use your slow motion and get the call as close to right as you can.
Yeah, we've talked about replay review a lot, and we the way that they decided to do it, similar to the NFL, which is whoever is reviewing the call knows what the call is, and then they make it based on that. Basically, can you prove that it's right or not? I don't know if it's because these guys want to watch the game. Like, you can't find 15 people a day to just be sitting there waiting for a play, and then you watch the play from all angles without knowing what the call is, and then just decide out, safe, or whatever you're trying to decide. And then the pop up, the fact that like replay review brought more of the pop ups on the slides, and you're off the base for a fraction of a second. Be now like that's a different conversation. Which by letter of the law you're out, but it just feels kind of weird that we're reviewing the wrong kind of stuff. So yeah, ultimately, there's been a lot of weird like reviews. I feel like with the Dodgers this year, that you're like, oh, you're convinced it's going to go one way. And then you maybe have some Dodger bias on your side. Like, well, replay review always goes against us, so this is going to go against us. And then it's like, oh, it didn't go against us. So I feel like that's happened a couple of times this year. So all in all, this is the system we have. And, sometimes it feels like it goes your way. Sometimes it feels like it doesn't. And sometimes it ends the game. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, and Langford in this case came way off the bag. This was definitely one where even without replay, he would have been called out, because he looked out in real time. And then on the replay, you can see, the exact time that he was off the bag was also the time that Rojas wasn't tagging him. And you could see by the time Rojas is like the wristband of his glove gets back to his leg, is right as the front spike of his cleat is getting back to the bag. I'm not 100% sure he was safe, but I'm sure enough that they should have just called him safe. And, you mentioned the NFL system. Yeah, I mean, they based this entire replay thing around NFL's replay system, which is a bad system and a silly system. And like, I hate even the challenges, and how I feel about the ABS with those challenges. I feel the same way with this. Like, if there's no limit on the number of calls an umpire can get wrong, there shouldn't be a limit on the number of times that an umpire can get overturned. And technically there's not, because as long as you're never wrong, you never lose your challenge. But if you're wrong in the second inning and then the umpire's wrong 6 times later in the game, there's nothing you can do about it. It's all silly, but this would be an easy fix. Just go to, I get, if you're between 40 and 60%, if it really is a toss-up, fine. Defer to the call on the field. But in this case, and in the case of Edman, and in so many we've seen, like you can go into it. I'm 80 to 90% sure that they missed the call, but that's not 100, so the call stands. And I feel like that's just, you're not getting the full benefit. I'm a big fan of replay. I'm a big fan of getting calls right, and I feel like you're not getting the full benefit of instant replay if you're not willing to overturn it because you're only 90% sure about something.
Yeah, and I see a couple comments here about NY will go with the umpire. Well, yeah, by default that is the case because they're gonna default to the call that's made on the field. It's not necessarily them siding with the umpire because MLB has wants to protect the umpires. That's just a matter of that was the call and that's the system
that's how the rules are written. Yeah. Like the rule says to default to the call on the field unless you're sure it was wrong. And I think I just want them to change the definition of sure in that sentence. I'd go with pretty sure, because if everybody watching is pretty sure the call was wrong, then you ought to change it.
Yeah, I didn't look into it too deep, but I saw Aaron Judge hit one on Sunday, and Aaron Boone ended up getting ejected. And the one replay I saw on Twitter looked like ridiculously fair, and they called it foul. I didn't see other angles, so I don't want to say, but yeah, it seemed like the one. If I watched one video and I saw it, I'm like, oh, that's a home run, and then it wasn't. It was like, oh, that's kind of weird.
Yeah. And again, Tanner Scott was going to get Jake Burger out anyway. This isn't the reason the Dodgers won that game. The Dodgers scored more runs than the Rangers in that game. And Wyatt Langford's slide was crappy. He didn't deserve to be safe. It was a bad slide. I mean, you got to learn how to slide, do a pop-up slide where you pop up, but not pop off the base. That's how baseball is. And so he didn't deserve to be safe, but he probably didn't deserve to be out based on what actually happened on the field.
And shout out to them trying to get more runs and pitting Will Smith for Austin Barnes, because if that was Austin Barnes on the plate, Wyatt Langford would have been already dusting off his cleats by the time
Barnes the throw would be getting to Rojas right about now.
Yeah. So
yeah. The offensive side, Will Smith scored the only run of the game and threw out Langford, or quote unquote threw out Langford to end the game. Will Smith player of the game, I guess. And you know what? We will really quick before we go, we'll shout out the bullpen, because the bullpen was put into use here much earlier than they expected. Tyler Glasnow was pitching very well. His pitch count was way under control. It was looking like a 7-inning game for Tyler Glasnow, and then it wasn't. It ended up being a 4-inning game. They had to use Luis Garcia in, in a rough spot. He's the one who came in when Glasnow got hurt. If you didn't hear Glasnow, it was just cramping. They don't expect him to miss a start, so that's good. But the bullpen had to throw 5 innings in this game, and Luis Garcia came at big. Ben Kasperius was great. Jack Dreyer was great. Evan Phillips. I hope he maintains that 27K per 9 rate the whole season, because that's pretty good so far. He's gotten 3
Phillips
outs.
Came in hot. He got activated earlier than expected. He was thrown into the 8th inning of a 1-run game. Got a couple big outs. Thrown into the 8th inning again of another 1-run game on Sunday, back to back, and his stuff looked nasty.
Yep. And we'll have more to say about the bullpen tomorrow. Probably we have an off day tomorrow. This one we figured we'd focus just on this series, but there is the news that Blake Treinen is out for a while, and maybe a long while. We'll see. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. We'll talk about a lot of things. The offense only scored 6-7 runs in this series. Still won 2 out of 3, and should have swept the series. Unfortunately, didn't. 7 runs, I think. So. Plenty to talk about tomorrow in the off day, but Dodgers win the series. They are a game and a half up on the Giants, half a game behind the Padres right now. In good shape for sure, playing well, and hopefully going to play even better as other players start hitting. So you got anything else for today, Vince?
Nothing else.
That'll do it for us. Thank you all for being here with us live. Good crowd here live on Sunday night. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate the chat. Thank you for being every day. If you are one, if you're not, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. Make that easier on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. You can also, for your second listen, you can check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can go beyond the podcast, become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at Vincent91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and both of our DMs are open there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK, 5625. We are here every weekday morning. We hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.